Hello everyone, welcome back. Yesterday we discussed the first part of competency of parties. If you remember, we were discussing competency of parties. And in what context? We were talking about the scenarios which will convert an agreement into a contract. We know that agreement plus fulfillment of certain conditions is what will make an agreement a contract. And one of the first conditions that we are currently discussing is competency of parties. And in competency of parties, we said that there are three aspects. Number one, none of the parties to an agreement should be a minor. Second, none of the parties should be of unsound mind. And third, none of the parties should be prohibited by law from entering into an agreement. And we finished the first aspect in the last class. Today we are going to talk about unsound mind. So we know that if a party to an agreement is of unsound mind at the time of making the agreement, then that party is incompetent. Question is, what is the meaning of unsound mind? What do you guys think? What could be the meaning of unsound mind? Because this is this is not defined in law. Indian Contract Act does not define the term unsound mind, all right, in an objective manner. Although there is a vague definition, but it doesn't objectively tell you as to who is a person of unsound mind. So we will have to understand this term properly. Now, whenever you get a question on unsound mind, just ask yourself this question. And what is the question? Was the person whose soundness of mind is in question, was that person able to, or you can say, was the person in a position to understand the terms of the agreement? And what do I mean to say here is, let's say there are two parties, Rahul and Aman. Okay, Rahul and Aman. There are two parties to an agreement, and we need to decide whether, let's say, Rahul is a competent party or not. And we have to determine it based on soundness of mind. So the question before us is Rahul of sound mind or unsound mind at the time of formation of the agreement? Apply this test. And the test is, was the person in a position to understand the terms of the agreement? What is it that we need to ask whenever we have to check whether a person is of sound mind or unsound mind? What is the question that you will ask? The question that you will ask is, was this person in a position to understand the terms of the agreement? So if you have to determine the soundness or unsoundness of Rahul's mind, then you will have to answer the following question. And the question is, was Rahul in a position to understand the terms of the agreement between these two? Okay. If yes, then Rahul is of sound mind. If no, then Rahul is of unsound mind. Alright, let's understand this better with the help of a story. Let's say Rahul and Aman go to a party one night, okay? And Rahul drinks a lot of alcohol. Rahul consumes a lot of alcohol, okay? And Rahul was so drunk that he could not walk properly. And he was not even able to think properly. Alright? Now, Aman decides to take advantage of Rahul. How? Rahul has an iPhone. Okay? So, Rahul has an iPhone brand new iPhone 17 Pro. And Aman likes that phone very much. So what Aman does is, Aman knows that Rahul is not in a position to understand anything at the moment because Rahul is drunk. All right, Rahul is too drunk. So Aman takes out a piece of paper. Okay, and that paper actually is an agreement which says that Rahul has decided to sell his iPhone to Aman for rupees 5,000. The actual price of the phone is actually 1,50,000. But the agreement says that Rahul is selling it to Aman for just rupees 5,000. And Aman had pre-planned the entire thing. Aman had taken Rahul out for the party. Aman made Rahul drink. It's not that Aman forced him to drink, but the party environment was such that Rahul consumed a lot of alcohol. And Aman knew this, that in the party, Rahul is going to drink a lot of alcohol. So Aman was prepared, and he was prepared with the agreement. Okay? He showed that agreement to Rahul. And and he told Rahul that Rahul, please sign this piece of paper, no? And Rahul was not able to understand anything. He did not even know that he was being handed a piece of paper. Okay, so Rahul takes it. Aman gives the pen to Rahul, and Rahul signs the agreement. Okay, next day, when Rahul wakes up in the morning, he sees that the iPhone is not there with him. So he checks with Aman. Aman, have you seen my iPhone? Then Aman tells Rahul that you sold your iPhone to me last night. Did you forget? Rahul doesn't remember anything. Then he tells Aman, I was too drunk. I don't know what happened last night. Aman shows him the piece of paper, which is actually the agreement, and tells Rahul, see, this is the agreement that we signed last night. Here is your signature, here is my signature. And it clearly says that you are selling your iPhone to me. Okay? Now Rahul is shocked. Okay? Because he did not even understand that this was an agreement. He was not aware of the terms of the agreement. Question is Rahul or was Rahul a competent party at the time this agreement was formed? Now, if you have to answer, was Rahul a competent party when the agreement was formed? And how will you answer this? The test is only this. Every time you have to apply the same test. And the test is, was Rahul in a position to understand the terms of the agreement? The answer is no. Hence, Rahul was of unsound mind. And law says that anybody who is not of a sound mind or who is of unsound mind at the time of formation of the agreement is an incompetent party. That party cannot make an agreement. Okay, this is the law. Let's write it down. Any party to an agreement who is of unsound mind at the time of formation of an agreement is an incompetent party. Okay, so now we know one thing, that okay, anybody who is unsound at the time of formation of the agreement is incompetent. That is something which we have understood so far. So the next question could be that wasn't Rahul wasn't Rahul voluntarily intoxicated? It means that did somebody force Rahul to drink, or did he consume alcohol on his own? Now, this question may come to your mind because when you read criminal law, you will see that there is a distinction between or difference between voluntary and involuntary intoxication. But The thing that you need to keep in your mind is, whenever you're talking about an agreement or a contract, is that there is no difference between voluntary or involuntary intoxication. Just remember this, note this point. No difference between voluntary and involuntary intoxication. What it means is, whether you consumed alcohol as per your wish, or whether somebody forced you to drink, or whether somebody mixed alcohol in your drink, does not matter. What matters is, were you in a position to understand the terms of the agreement at the time of formation of the agreement? That is the only question that needs to be answered, all right? And why are we talking about intoxication? Because intoxication can lead to unsoundness of mind. Intoxication can lead to a mental state where your mind is not able to understand the terms of the agreement. What other types of scenarios can we imagine which may lead to unsoundness of mind? What other scenarios can you think of? Unsoundness of mind. One scenario that we talked about was intoxication, right? We know that if anybody consumes a lot of alcohol, it has an effect on the person's mind. So much so that the person may not even be able to walk properly, or may not even be able to understand anything that is happening with him or around him. All right. Another scenario could be that of mental illness. All right. What is mental illness? You might have seen a lot of movies where a person is suffering from a disease known as split personality disorder, which means that at one point of time the person thinks that he is something, okay, but at a later point of time the person starts behaving like a different person. So you have two personalities. So anybody who is suffering from a split personality disorder has two kinds of personalities within him. Just imagine that uh, somebody thinks of himself as a movie hero, okay, during the day, and as soon as the night arrives, that person becomes a student, and completely changes himself. He's suffering from a mental disease, and that is why it is known as a mental illness. So one scenario that we can imagine is that of split personality disorder. Okay. Or you might have seen, although that's not, I wouldn't want to go into the scientific elements, but you might have, just for your understanding, you might have seen a lot of people being possessed by ghosts, okay? And if you've seen movies, or anybody who has experienced this in real life, you would have seen that a person possessed by a ghost behaves differently. He is no longer the same person, okay? Now, what is that? We can call that also as a mental illness. The person becomes something else altogether. That is no longer the person that you normally know, okay? For example, you have a friend, you know that this person has these characteristics, but imagine that person is possessed by a ghost, okay, or is suffering from a mental illness like split personality disorder, such that at some points of time he becomes something else altogether, and you feel that, oh, I don't even know this person. All right. So that is an example of mental illness, somebody who is suffering from mental illness. But question is, will all kinds of mental illness make a party incompetent? Now, just understand, mental illness is a medical term, right? It's a medical term. This and the unsoundness of mind, we're discussing unsoundness of mind. Unsoundness of mind is a legal term. And why? Then you may ask, why are we discussing mental illness? Because in many scenarios, mental illness may cause unsoundness of mind. But you need to remember this, not all types of mental illnesses may cause unsound or may lead to unsoundness of mind. The law is only concerned about legal unsoundness of mind. What does that mean? It only means the same question, the same test. Was the person in a position to understand the terms of the agreement when, at the time of formation of the agreement? All right. Now, just imagine somebody who is suffering from mental illness, split personality disorder. So the person behaves like he's a different person at night, okay? But during the day, he's completely normal, completely fine. And he signs an agreement during the day. Question, is that, can that person say later that he was suffering from unsoundness of mind? The answer is no, because when he signed the agreement, at that point of time, he was able to understand the terms of the agreement. Okay, so let's note this down because this is a crucial distinction. Though, if you remember, when we were looking at the definition of unsoundness of mind, and I told you the test. Okay, what was the test? Understand the terms of the agreement. Okay, any party to an agreement is of unsound mind at the time of formation of an agreement is an incompetent party. So what is important here? Time of formation of the agreement. Okay. So far we have understood the meaning of unsoundness of mind. And what is that? It simply means that the relevant party whose soundness of mind is in question is not in a position to understand the terms of the agreement. Second question that we need to ask is, the soundness of mind or unsoundness of mind is also a question of time. All right, because what are we concerned about? We're concerned about the fact that when the agreement is formed, at that point of time the person should be of a sound mind. All right, so time also becomes very critical. Okay, so time of formation of, this is the second aspect, time of formation of an agreement. This is also crucial. And it is at this time, the party should be of sound mind. All right. We're not concerned about any other time. All we need to check is number one, is the party of a sound mind or unsound mind? How do we check that? Answer the question. Was the party able to understand the terms of the agreement? Okay. Second, time. Time factor is important. When we said that, was the party able to understand the terms of the agreement, question is when? At the time of formation of the agreement. At that point of time, at the time of formation of the agreement, was the party able to understand the terms of the agreement? All right, if the answer is yes, then the person is of a sound mind. And if the answer is no, then is of an unsound mind. So this much we are clear about unsoundness of mind. Now, any question that you get on soundness of mind, unsoundness of mind, if you remember these two things, all right, then you will not be able to, you will not make any mistake. Okay, you will not get any questions wrong. And I've simplified it so much for you because I've seen a lot of people make mistakes in this area. They confuse sometimes medical unsoundness with legal unsoundness. Legal unsoundness is not at all concerned about whether you are mentally unsound or sound. All right, legal unsoundness checks only one thing, which is what? Which is this. At the time of formation of the agreement, was the party able to understand the terms of the agreement or not? This is the only thing which the law cares about. All right. Now, the next question that may come to our mind is, okay, let's say a person is of unsound mind. A party to an agreement is of an unsound mind. What happens then? Okay, some of you may say that he becomes an incompetent party, which is correct, which is 100% correct. Okay, but does it make the agreement unenforceable? That is the next question. If one of the parties is incompetent, does it make the agreement unenforceable? Now take Rahul and Aman's example. In that scenario, there is an agreement in place, right? Because there is an offer, there is acceptance, and there is consideration, correct? Because Aman proposed to purchase the phone from Rahul. Rahul agreed to sell. And what is the evidence of acceptance? Rahul's signature on the agreement. And consideration? Consideration to be given by Rahul is iPhone, and consideration to be given by Aman is rupees 5,000. Correct? So we have an agreement. But we also know that Rahul was of unsound mind at the time of formation of the agreement. Why? Because he was so intoxicated that he was not in a position to understand the terms of the agreement. So question is, does the agreement become unenforceable? And I told you in the last class that whenever you see this term unenforceable, two things should come to your mind. One, void, and second, void ab initio. If you remember, we had seen that an agreement with a minor is void ab initio, which means unenforceable from the beginning. And it is as if the agreement does not even exist. Okay? So whenever you see void ab initio, you have to imagine a situation that even if there is offer, even if there is acceptance and consideration, there is no agreement at all. That agreement did not even exist. And that is what is known by void ab initio. Okay, the agreement is unenforceable from the beginning. And what is void? Void is also unenforceable. If an agreement is void, okay, then the court cannot enforce it. So the question comes, what is the difference between void ab initio and void? Void ab initio is void from the beginning, okay, or unenforceable from the beginning. And one example that we know is that of a minor. And void is, it may be enforceable at the beginning, okay, it may be enforceable at the beginning, but it becomes unenforceable later. Can you think of an example? Let's take your and my example. You pay me 50,000 to teach you for CLAT, okay? And the agreement says that I will have to teach you for 12 months from January till December until CLAT happens, all right? And for that, you have agreed to pay me rupees 50,000. Is there a valid agreement between the two of us? The answer is yes, because you offered me to teach you and I accepted your offer. And there's consideration. You have agreed to pay me 50,000 rupees and I have agreed to teach you, all right? So we have a valid agreement. But let's say after a month I die, all right? I'm no longer in this world. What happens to the agreement? The agreement was to teach you. Now, can you force my father to teach you? Okay, but since I'm not there in this world, can you force my father to teach you? The answer is no. The agreement was between the two, between you and I. All right. So this is an example of a situation where when the agreement was formed between the two of us, it was perfectly enforceable. But it later became unenforceable due to my death. If you go to the court and ask the court to enforce this agreement after I have died, the court will say, sorry, this agreement has become void. Alright, so this is the distinction between void and void ab initio. There's a third term, voidable. And I'm going into the details of all of these things because we have to understand what happens to an agreement where one of the parties is of unsound mind. So we know that currently you know that we're discussing competency of parties, and the first party that we talked about was a minor, and we saw the effect of an agreement when a minor is involved, and we saw that an agreement with a minor will make the agreement void ab initio, correct? So right now what we are looking at is what will happen to an agreement where one of the parties is of unsound mind. Now we have three categories. One, void ab initio. Second, void. Third, voidable. First two we saw. Okay, what is the meaning of voidable? Okay, voidable is also, as you can see, there's the term void, which means that it has some connection with unenforceability, that's for sure. But the addition of the term able means that anything which is voidable is capable of being enforced at the discretion of the relevant party. In simple terms, all it means is, if the law says that, okay, somebody was of unsound mind at the time of formation of the agreement, therefore he should not be taken advantage of, and therefore we are making a law saying that anybody who was of unsound mind at the time of formation of the agreement should have the discretion or should have the choice to enforce the agreement or to cancel that agreement. All right, just imagine this. Rahul was taken advantage of, correct? Because that iPhone is worth 1,50,000 rupees, and he was in a drunken state of mind when he was not able to understand the terms of the agreement. Somebody took advantage of him, and his iPhone worth rupees 1,50,000 was sold at just rupees 5,000. So he was clearly being taken advantage of. Therefore, the law says we will give an option to Rahul, who is the affected party in this case, to decide whether he wants to enforce the agreement, which means that whether he wants to go ahead with the agreement or whether he wants to cancel the agreement. It is simply, in the context of unsoundness of mind, it simply means that agreement is voidable. At whose discretion? At the discretion of the party who was of unsound mind when? At the time of formation of the agreement. All right, so we clearly know now that the effect of unsoundness of mind on an agreement is that the agreement becomes voidable, and we saw that the meaning of voidable is that it is capable of, that agreement can be enforced but only at the discretion of the party who is affected. And in unsoundness of mind, who is the affected party? The law says the party who was of unsound mind at the time of formation of the agreement, that party is the affected party, and that party can decide whether he wants to enforce the agreement or not. So let's take Rahul's example. Rahul can decide whether he wishes to proceed with the agreement, which means that he can take 5,000 rupees and sell the phone, or whether he wants to cancel the agreement. It means that he will tell Aman that this agreement is voidable, okay, and I've chosen to cancel it. And also you need to understand, when we saw the definition of the term voidable, I told you that it is capable of being enforced at the discretion of the relevant party. And who is the relevant party? The law will tell you, and I will explain to you who is the relevant party for all applicable scenarios. For example, I told you for unsoundness of mind, who is the relevant party or affected party? The party who is of unsound mind. Only that party can decide whether whether that party wants to proceed with the agreement or not, and not the other party. In this scenario, Aman cannot decide, or the agreement is not voidable at the discretion of Aman, because Aman is not the relevant party. So you will have to keep this in your mind, that voidable, whenever an agreement is voidable, the discretion lies with the relevant party. And who is the relevant party? That is something which you will need to remember. In unsoundness of mind, the relevant party is the party who was of unsound mind at the time of formation of the agreement. All right, so this is it on unsoundness of mind. Hope you understood everything. So we have covered two aspects or two elements of competency of parties. One is minor, second is unsoundness of mind. All right, tomorrow we are going to look at the third and last element, which is that if the law prohibits a party from entering into an agreement, that party is also an incompetent party. That we are going to cover tomorrow. All right.